In the busy streets of a big city, where luxury boutiques and five-star hotels compete to attract a hand-picked clientele, the Celeste Elegance store stood as a bastion of ostentation and refinement. Its windows, impeccably arranged, conveyed the image of almost unreal perfection. Designer dresses, with delicately draped fabrics, rubbed shoulders with accessories of such exclusivity that they seemed to belong to another world. Every shelf, every table seemed to have been arranged according to a careful plan, and the soft lighting highlighted the products with almost obsessive precision, creating an atmosphere of pure sophistication. The employees, still dressed in their immaculate uniforms, moved through the space with almost supernatural fluidity, offering customers attention that was both respectful and distant. A behavior forged by years of service in places where luxury and prestige tolerate no imperfection. However, behind the illusion of this perfection, a much less glamorous truth was hidden. Celeste Elegance belonged to Malik Leroy, a 40-year-old black man, who, through his determination and audacity, had managed to establish himself in the very closed world of the luxury industry. Born into a modest family, Malik had built his empire from scratch, armed with his intelligence and resilience. His rise, although praised by many, was far from going unnoticed. The recognition he had acquired in this exclusive environment was coupled with a suspicious, sometimes contemptuous look because of the color of his skin. But Malik had found his own way to assert himself and push the limits imposed by society. And, above all, he never forgot the roots of his success. His mother, Denise Leroy, 70, was the real quiet force behind his empire. Although often in the shadows, Denise had continued to play a crucial role in Malik's journey, not only as a mother but also as a spiritual mentor. A single mother, she had raised her son in working-class neighborhoods, where inequality and racial discrimination were daily realities. Yet, despite the obstacles, Denise had passed on to Malik an unfailing work ethic and a deep sense of justice. All her life, she had learned to remain discreet, to blend into the background, so as not to draw attention to her difference. She had to make herself invisible, to escape the judgments of a world which systematically refused her a place. But behind this reserve, Denise had never stopped dreaming, believing in the value of her son and in the idea that he could one day break the chains of racism and stereotypes. One sunny spring afternoon, Denise decided to visit Celeste Elegance. She hadn't seen her son for a few weeks, and she wanted to surprise him by choosing an elegant dress for her beloved goddaughter, whom she adored more than anything. To her, this gesture seemed simple and sweet, an act of love to offer to the one she considered a light in her life. But what she didn't know was that this innocent visit would plunge her into a brutal confrontation with the reality of institutionalized racism, even in the most prestigious spheres of society. When she walked through the doors of Celeste Elegance, the contrast between this space and her own world immediately jumped out at her. Everything seemed bigger, more imposing, almost intimidating. The mirrors sparkled like windows into another universe. The customers, each dressed in more extravagant outfits than the last, exchanged almost imperceptible glances, a mixture of distrust and judgment. The saleswomen, impeccably dressed and made up, were like silent spectators at a fashion show where only they had the entry key. And Denise, with her simple but elegant clothes, suddenly felt tiny in this ocean of cold luxury. She began to wander between the shelves, looking for a dress for her goddaughter. She tried not to be disturbed by the furtive glances of the other customers, but a palpable tension hung in the air. She knew it wasn't her world, but she hoped that at least she could buy a gift for the little one she loved so much. It was then that she caught the eye of Claire, a young saleswoman who seemed as busy as she was distant. Claire, fresh out of business school, was the kind of person who seemed to embody the ideal of the new generation of luxury workers. Young, ambitious, and cold. As soon as his eyes met Denise, a slight pout appeared on his face, a pout that spoke volumes. Claire, although having been trained to greet customers with the utmost professionalism, could not help but judge this customer from another world. She allowed herself a disparaging look before walking towards Denise. "Can I help you?" she asked, but with an intonation that clearly betrayed doubt. A doubt about Denise's legitimacy to be in this place, but also about her financial means. Denise responded calmly, as she always did in these situations where one tries to look small. I'm looking for a dress for a little girl. For a special occasion. Claire, barely seeming interested, shrugged her shoulders and walked away without a word. She seemed to perceive Denise not as a customer, but as an intruder. Denise, aware of the attitude, decided not to let it affect her and continued her search. However, she felt Claire, now omnipresent, watching her, ready to intervene at the slightest opportunity. When Denise approached a display to examine some items, she found herself suddenly tapped on the shoulder by Claire, as if the young saleswoman simply couldn't stand her presence. The shock of the brutality of this gesture made her stumble, almost falling on a display. She caught herself, but the humiliation had already happened. Claire, without apologizing, gave him a haughty look. "You are not welcome here," she said icily. "If you can't behave, go somewhere else." Denise, shocked and deeply unsettled, took a step back, trying to flee the situation, but as her feet slowly landed on the cold marble, a brutal slap hit her on the cheek, causing her to stagger. Claire had hit her. The violence of the act resonated like a clap of thunder in the cozy space of the store. The scene, although discreet, was a moment of shocking injustice. For Denise, this gesture symbolized much more than a simple physical altercation. It was a painful reminder that, despite all she had accomplished, she remained an outsider in a world that denied her her place. Malik Leroy was in his office, absorbed in a strategy meeting with his associates. The plan to expand his luxury empire was progressing rapidly. His phone vibrated on the desk. A call. He took it, thinking it might just be an update about another one of his ventures. But the voice on the other end of the line, panicked, announced news that had the effect of a muffled bell in his chest. The employee told him, between panting breaths, what had just happened. Malik closed his eyes, clenching his fists. Anger rose within him, but it did not manifest itself in an explosion. No, he had learned to control this rage, to transform it into action. Within minutes, he was already on his way to heavenly elegance, speeding through the city, thoughts swirling in his mind. When he arrived, the air was heavy with tension. The store, usually a place of luxury and excellence, suddenly seemed heavy, almost suffocating. Inside, the atmosphere was palpable. Denise was sitting in an armchair in a corner of the store, her head bowed, her hands clenched in her knees. His face betrayed obvious pain, but also a resilience that emanated from every fiber of his being. She hadn't cried. Not yet. Seeing her, Malik felt a wave of sadness invade him, but also a new determination. He approached her, placed a hand on her shoulder gently, but also with quiet firmness. "Mom, you don't have to stay here. We'll work this out," he whispered, his words like a silent promise. Claire, the saleswoman responsible for the incident, still didn't know who was behind that calm but unwavering face. Seeing her enter, she raised a slight pout of disdain, as if she were simply going to face another influential and wealthy client. But seeing Malik's piercing gaze, reality hit her hard. His smile froze, and the arrogant tone that animated his features disappeared in a split second. "I am the owner of this store," Malik announced, his voice calm, but with a sharp clarity that echoed in the tension-saturated air. "And I'm afraid what you just did to my mother I won't tolerate." The store manager, an older man, hurriedly tried to defend Claire, but Malik's voice silenced any objections. "No, there is no defense. Not here, not now," he said, giving the manager a cold look. "I don't want to see any more customers in this store today. Close it." The manager, taken by surprise, only dared to nod, but he already knew that the situation had just crossed a point of no return. Malik, in one smooth motion, took out his phone and immediately called his lawyers, asking them to take necessary action. In the blink of an eye, the ramifications of the incident multiplied. A few hours later, the center of the store was transformed into a media stage. Journalists came running, attracted by the incident, as they crowded around Malik. He stood before them, his face impassive, but his words were crystal clear. "Today, what is at stake here is not only the future of my company. What is at stake is the question of dignity. The dignity of a man, of a woman, of an entire community. This is not the first time that such humiliations have occurred in the world of luxury, and it must stop. He didn't need to shout. The journalists listened to him, hanging on every word. Malik spoke calmly about the incident, but also about a value system that, despite its outward brilliance, remained tinged with deep-rooted prejudice and racism. Luxury, elegance, all of this cannot be conceived without respect. If it is not inclusive, if it is not imbued with dignity, then it is an illusion, he continued, his voice becoming firmer. The scandal broke out in a media wave that shook the world of luxury. Reports followed one another, social networks exploded. Malik, faithful to his promise, announced the temporary suspension of the store's activities, the time to question its internal practices and consider radical changes. The most immediate reaction was that of Claire, who found herself, overnight, without a job. But Malik had no taste for humiliation. He never tried to put anyone down. Claire's life didn't need to be destroyed for her to learn her lesson. "I'm not trying to crush you," he told her, "but to make you understand that this kind of behavior has consequences. You made a mistake. You will have the opportunity to grow and change." But the impact of this event was not limited to a simple sanction. Malik, in his speech, announced the implementation of a training program on diversity and inclusion, not only in his stores, but also in all the companies that were part of his network. Responsibility is not just individual. It is collective, he declared. It is a responsibility that we must all bear together. A world of luxury cannot be an exclusive world. It must be a world of equal opportunities. Denise, sitting in the background, watched her son with an admiration she had never known before. The pain of humiliation had given way to a deep pride, a pride that went well beyond his own experience. She knew that Malik, with his actions and his vision, would redefine the luxury sector. But above all, he would redefine what it meant to be a person of power. Power based on respect, equity, and justice. As for Claire, she found herself confronted with the harsh reality of her actions. But she was no longer a simple character in the shadows of a world she believed she controlled. She was now facing a much bigger world, where the values of respect and inclusion had become the true criteria of belonging. And in that world, there was no room for prejudice.